Hey everyone, this is Bulba Trainer. First off, I wanted to say thank you to everyone who watched my last video, the people who liked it, and the people who subscribed, especially my coworkers who helped to spread it around. I needed a proper first video though, and better channel art. Something that sets the tone for the rest of the channel. I've been playing Pokemon for a long time. I cannot think of anything else that's been such a long-standing obsession of mine. The first games came out on the 28th of September 1998. I frequently say that I've been playing the game since the day they came out, but in all honesty, I was 8 and I don't really remember if it was that first day or the next. Back then, we didn't have social media or really good internet, and all the adults thought it was a fad, so it's not like the day some random kid picked up a video game was recorded on anything but my neurons. I do remember having it before the end of that week though. I also remember starting a game with Squirtle before starting over with Bulbasaur, before I'd even gotten to Brock. Though I think I might qualify as an Elite Four trainer by now, I'm not mentioning this as some sort of elitist badge to hold over your heads. I don't play those sort of games with fandoms. I'm always excited when someone else likes something that I do, something we can have in common, something we can talk about. Have you only been playing Pokemon since yesterday? Welcome aboard. Did you stand behind me in line at the store that first week? Awesome. I bring it up because it means that I've been lucky enough to see every generation of Pokemon as they've come out and been able to compare and contrast Pokemon as we've gone from 150 to 896 at the time of this video. I'm sure that we'll be at 1,000 before we know it. Each new generation brings us new teams and new favorites, and that's what I wanted to talk about for my first real video. If you like this video, don't forget to let me know by hitting like, and also if you want to see more content like this or from me, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. For this video, I'll be excluding legendary Pokemon because for a lot of people, they're an obvious choice, and I don't want to fall into the trap of just listing off a bunch of legendaries. I also want to add that this is just my opinion. Chances are that my favorites won't be yours. If you want to post yours in the comments below, that'd be awesome, but there's no need to get upset or angry. People have different opinions. It is a known thing. So without further ado, here's my list of favorite Pokemon from each gen. Generation 1, Bulbasaur. As my starting gen, Generation 1 will always have the longest list of favorites for me. It's not that I'm a Gen 1er, but I've had over 20 years to rearrange my favorites from the original gen. Narrowing it down isn't easy, even after having 2 decades to decide, but in the end, I'll always end up picking Bulbasaur. Technically my first starter ever, since I didn't even get to the first gym with Squirtle, Bulbasaur has always captivated me. Is it an animal? Is it a plant? Who cares? From the surly, untrusting nature of Ash's Bulbasaur in the anime to the one that I carry around on my keychain every day, I've always loved Bulbasaur and their evolutionary line from the very beginning. Even in Japanese, Bulbasaur is something special, getting the name Fushigi-dane, which means isn't it strange? This is opposed to the generic name like Charmander, Hitokage, and Squirtle, Zenigame. While Blastoise looks like a tank, and Charizard is an awesome dragon, and Venusaur is decidedly not, people who like Bulbasaur have one last advantage up our sleeves, besides rocking the early game gems in Kanto. Bulbasaur is the only Pokemon that is objectively number 1. Because it's their national dex number. Get it? However, since it's part of my channel name and there's one on my shoulder, I think using Bulbasaur is cheating just a bit, so I'm also going to add Arcanine. I know Arcanine are somewhat overrepresented in these types of videos, but I can't help it. Arcanine is a beast. Phenomenal design with the aspects of dogs, tigers, and lions, amazing stats, real-world lore of a living, breathing Komainu, and just an all-around good doggo. I've always had at least one dog, I've always been a dog person, and growing up, it wasn't hard to imagine Arcanine filling that role, because they seem like they would be absolutely loyal and obedient. This is shown by their use as the police Pokemon of choice for Officer Jenny's in the anime, and their origin lore of the guardian lions in Asia who repel evil spirits. Who wouldn't want a dog with those credentials? Also, their Pokédex entries have them running at 415 kilometers per hour, which would have been useful to, say, a geeky kid without any friends and more than one bully growing up. Arcanine are also the closest thing to a legendary you can get without actually catching a legendary. Ash sees one honored with Zapdos, Moltres, and Articuno in a Pokemon Center, and when you're 8 and also encountering a franchise still finding its legs in terms of its world building, that's as good as the genuine article. Arcanine may not be actual legendary Pokemon, but they certainly get a gold star for trying. Generation 2, Houndour, and Houndoom. I promise not all of these will be dogs, but come on. Maybe not the strongest of the Gen 2s, but certainly appealing as partners, Houndour and Houndoom are a great mix of real mythology and design. Guardian dogs of the underworld are in some of the oldest religions, and the skeletal accents on the two, as well as Houndoom's tail and horns, are part of that creative interpretation. While some hellhounds in media or lore, such as the one from the TV show Supernatural or the Barghest of Britain, depict hellhounds as violent creatures, the earlier myths of Garm and Cerberus depict a more loyal dog who's simply doing the duty of separating the living from the dead. Houndour's Pokédex entries talking about their loyalty and teamwork, and Houndoom's entries mentioning eternal pain from their burns and their howls being omens for death are an interesting mix of these two outlooks. In game, they're pretty useful as well. With a semi-unique typing and decent movesets, even a Mega Evolution, they're a welcome addition to round out any party. Generation 3, Absol. I've noticed that the disaster Pokemon can be overlooked sometimes. Not that Absol's unpopular, just that in a list of favorites, it's usually the one that's missed the most. The design of both their regular and Mega Evolved forms, though, are great, with their black and white palette making you think of duality even if you don't catch the Taijutsu on Absol's head or the angelic and even devilish design on Mega Absol. Absol warns people of danger, just like the Baitse they are based on, though culturally, Absol have established an aura of evil around themselves because they are seen as the cause of those crises rather than just the messenger. This type of mistaken identity and long-evolving cultural significance of certain animals in the real world has always been an interest of mine, and it really speaks to the way that the fantasy world can mimic our own. Think of black cats and their association with either bad or good luck depending on your culture. Having that sort of cultural evolution and importance packaged up in a Pokemon makes them my type of partner. Duskull was my alternative/runner-up for this generation. Again, because of its appearance on my shirt, I thought it might be a little obvious, so I went with another favorite, Absol, but Duskull has also long been in my top choices for Gen 3 Pokemon. This tiny floating Grim Reaper has Pokédex entries that make it seem like it's a bad guy, kind of, but they've also got an air of goofiness about them. Like the Ghastly family in the Tower of Terror episode, you get the feeling that they'd be intimidating at first, but are probably just lonely and looking for friends to laugh with. And really, aren't we all? Generation 4, Lucario. I know a lot of people consider Lucario a favorite, but I mean, come on, there's a reason. Lucario and their pre-evolution Riolu are astounding Pokemon with an interesting origin and one that is significant to me. I've always loved the Egyptian god Anubis, and a Pokemon centered around that design was always going to be in my top picks. And it was done so well. Lucario boasts a great design, looking every bit like the fighter that it is, while also containing aspects of jackals or wolves, while Riolu is just cute enough for you to realize it's a baby Pokemon, and with Mega Lucario, carefully building on that foundation. The concept of aura is also an interesting addition to the Pokemon world's lore in and of itself, and is another example of the real world's culture influencing it. Since Anubis is the god of the dead and is part of the weighing of the heart ceremony, Lucario's ability to see and use aura can be seen as parallel to Anubis's role for caring for the soul of the deceased. Even Lucario's shiny form has a bit of lore attached to it, assuming it wasn't just a random palette swap, with the golden wolf being one of the inspirations of Anubis's imagery, and the color scheme of shiny Lucario looking like a simplified version of that fur color. Except the blue. Can't explain the blue. Generation 5, Zoroark. I'm not too proud to admit that at one point in my life, I got too busy for gaming. I had just moved out on my own and was trying to figure out adulting. I stopped playing or watching much of anything for a bit during that time. It wasn't really for a long time, maybe a year or two, but that all changed when I saw Zorua and Zoroark. I was in a department store's electronics section, and the reveal of Gen 5 had just happened, and the store had these signs showing the two newest Pokemon, and I was hit with a wave of nostalgia just from those designs. In an example of my failure to develop proper impulse control by that age, Immediately bought a 3DS and a new copy of Soul Silver to start getting into Pokemon again. I can't even really explain why a picture of these two reignited my love of Pokemon in that moment, but I do know that in the 10 years since, I haven't regretted it, and they've been my favorite Gen 5 Pokemon since then. Looking sneaky and crafty just like their signature ability, and awesome in general, with one of the best color palettes for both their regular and shiny forms, Zoroark also has the stats that make it worth the effort of obtaining one, even if that wasn't the easiest thing in the world in the generation they debuted in. My Dark team wouldn't be complete without them. Generation 6, Talonflame. Everyone who's played Pokemon knows that you find starter birds early in the game that are frequently meant to join your party, so you'll have a strong flyer win if you need one. Pick-a-Peck, Pidgey, and Pidove are examples, and also all coincidentally have the same first letters in their names, despite me just randomly picking some starting bird Pokemon. Part of that series of birds is Fletchling, and despite some coloration differences, it seems to be pretty much similar to the others. A cute little bird, until it evolves. Fletchinder and Talonflame show their true colors with the addition of a fun twist on the regular normal flying paradigm, becoming fire flying types. I knew I had to have one on my team my first time playing Y, and it certainly didn't disappoint. Combining fire and flying frees up some space in your party for another type you might want to try, and is especially useful as the Kalos region doesn't have very many native flyers. I know it's got that debilitating rock weakness, but it's not the first Pokemon to have a double weakness, and that's why I use one of those free spaces I talked about to have a strong grass type. Plus, it's got the Falcon look going for it. I'm well into my adult years, but I still harbor my childish love for these birds of prey, and can only imagine that with a fire extinguisher, a fiery falcon would be even better than the real thing. Generation 7, Mimikyu. I don't want to spend a bunch of time in my videos talking about my insecurities, but when it comes to Mimikyu, I'm going to make an exception. I share a deep personal connection with this Pokemon. Like a lot of other ghost Pokemon, Mimikyu is misunderstood and is just looking for a friend, but it fears itself too ugly, so it crafts a costume to make it look like the best known and more popular Pokemon. In-game lore at least, since Mimikyu got number 3 in 2020's Pokemon of the Year poll behind Greninja and Lucario. But who hasn't had a day like that? Maybe not so literally, but who hasn't had a day where they felt unwanted or unloved? I think a lot of people can identify with Mimikyu, no matter if it's just for one day or a lot longer, or at the very least they can sympathize with that feeling. The design is also cute to me. Sword's Pokédex entry says that the costume makes Mimikyu creepier, but I disagree. When Sun and Moon were first announced and Mimikyu was revealed, I even remember seeing some fan art of Mimikyu dressed up as Bulbasaur, Squirtle, and Charmander, and just like those plush toys of Ditto transformed into other Pokemon, I thought that the other Mimikyu costumes were a great idea. I think for a day or two, I even mistook the fan art for genuine concept art and was actually a little disappointed when I turned out to be wrong. I still think adding some more costume to Mimikyu would be a good idea, and it certainly wouldn't hurt the lore of it just trying to be loved, but whether or not that happens, it'll still be my favorite Pokemon in the Alola region and always welcome in my party. Generation 8, Grapploct. No offense to Octillery or its fans, but to me, Grapploct is simply the perfect octopus to Pokemon translation. The idea of octopuses, octopi, octopodes, combining with martial arts is so natural that I can't believe it took them 8 generations to come out with it. The idea of a cephalopod Pokemon isn't new, even the octopus has been done before, but it doesn't matter. Grapploct and Clobbopus are still unique enough to not be called derivative, and there's something cool about seeing this octopus, ready to get into a brawl, even standing on 2 tentacles like legs to get a better advantage. Not to mention the fact that Clobbopus is just adorable, like a kid wearing grown-up boxing gloves or something. It knows one day it's going to be a big-time fighter. The luchador design aspects, the color palette, both regular and shiny, and everything about these Pokemon, just good design. Speed is a bit of problem in-game, but speed isn't everything, and sometimes a Pokemon can be remarkable just because it looks cool and has a decent moveset. Not everything has to be about stats. That wraps up this list of my favorite Pokemon from each gen. I want to thank everyone for watching. To me, even 5 people watching something I made is amazing. I also look forward to your own lists in the comments below to see how they compare to mine. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you all next time.